Be me, Julian, 28-year-old male, lived a pretty quiet life in a modest apartment on the edge of the city. Always been the introverted type. Studied data science because numbers don't lie and they don't have hidden agendas. Spent most of my weekends building custom keyboards or hiking alone. Got a job offer from a mid-sized tech company called Vesper Analytics. The pay was incredible. The benefits included full dental and a very generous retirement plan. I was excited to start a new chapter. Showed up on the first day wearing my best charcoal suit. The office was one of those glass and steel monstrosities. Walked into the lobby and felt a bit of a chill. The receptionist, a young female named Rosaline, barely looked up. She pointed me toward the elevator. The 14th floor was where the magic happened. I stepped out and saw the team I would be working with. The department was headed by a female named Sloane. Sloane was in her late 30s, very sharp, very polished. She looked at me like I was a bug under a microscope. She introduced me to the rest of the team. There was Valerie, the senior developer. There was Nadia, the junior analyst. Then there was Genevieve, who sat in on our first meeting. Genevieve was technically HR but seemed to spend all her time in our department. It became clear very quickly that I was the only male in the entire unit. The previous guy, a male named Marcus, had left suddenly. Nobody would tell me why. I took my seat at a small desk in the corner. My first few weeks were productive but lonely. I would finish my reports ahead of schedule. I would offer to help Valerie with her backlog. She would just stare at her screen and tell me she had it under control. I tried to join them for lunch once. Sloane looked at the others and said they were having a private strategy session. I sat at my desk and ate a ham sandwich alone. I figured they were just a tight-knit group of friends. I told myself to just keep my head down and do the work. The atmosphere started to shift after the first month. I would walk into the break room and the talking would stop instantly. Nadia would giggle and look at her phone. Sloane started giving me the most tedious tasks possible. I was a senior data analyst being asked to format spreadsheets for hours. I didn't complain because I wanted to be a team player. One afternoon, I was staying late to finish a projection report. I heard voices coming from Sloane's office. The door was cracked open just a tiny bit. I heard my name mentioned. It was Sloane talking to Genevieve. Sloane said she couldn't stand having a male in her space. She said the energy was off and the team felt stifled. Genevieve laughed and said they just needed a reason to let me go. Sloane replied that a simple layoff wouldn't be enough. She wanted to make sure I couldn't sue for discrimination. My heart started pounding against my ribs. I felt a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I realized they weren't just being cold. They were actively planning to destroy my career. I went home that night and sat in my dark apartment. I thought about quitting, but I had a mortgage and bills to pay. I remembered my uncle, a retired lawyer, always told me to document everything. The state I lived in was a one-party consent state for recording. I went online and bought a high-quality digital recorder that looked like a pen. I also synced my phone to upload audio directly to a private cloud server. I started wearing the pen in my breast pocket every single day. I kept a physical logbook in my desk drawer, hidden under some old manuals. The next week, the tension in the office was palpable. Valerie started accusing me of making mistakes that I hadn't made. She claimed I had deleted a shared folder on the server. I had my logs showing I hadn't even accessed that folder. When I showed her the proof, she just turned away and scoffed. Nadia started complaining that I was staring at her. I was looking at my dual monitors, which happened to be in her general direction. I moved my entire desk setup to face a blank wall. Even then, she told Sloane I was making her uncomfortable. Sloane called me into her office for a formal warning. I had my pen recorder running. Sloane told me that my presence was problematic. I asked her for specific examples of my poor performance. She couldn't give me any. She just said I lacked the culture fit. I remained extremely polite and professional. I recorded the entire 20-minute lecture. The real nightmare started on a Tuesday in November. The office was mostly empty because of a local industry conference. Only Sloane, Valerie, Nadia, and I were in the building. I was working on a quarterly audit. Sloane walked over to my desk and told me to come into the conference room. She said we needed to discuss my future. I felt a pit in my stomach. I made sure my recorder was active. I walked into the conference room and saw Valerie and Nadia already sitting there. Sloane closed the door and locked it. She didn't sit down. She looked at me with a strange, triumphant smile. She told me that she was giving me a choice. I could resign immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement, or they would call the police and report me for a physical altercation. I was stunned. I asked her what she was talking about. Nadia pulled out her phone and showed me a bruise on her arm. It looked like a fingerprint bruise, but it was clearly self-inflicted. Valerie said she would testify that she saw me grab Nadia. Sloane said she would tell HR that I had threatened her as well. They had it all planned out. It was 3 against 1. They thought they had me trapped. I felt a surge of pure, cold adrenaline. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't raise my voice. I looked Sloane in the eye and asked if she was serious. She said she was dead serious and that I had 5 minutes to decide. She started screaming. She literally started screaming for help. She knocked over a chair and messed up her own hair. Valerie started crying on cue. It was like watching a rehearsed play. I just stood there perfectly still. The security guard, a male named Silas, came running to the door. He had to use his master key to get in. Sloane fell to the floor and pointed at me. She told Silas that I had snapped and attacked them. Silas looked at me with confusion. He knew me as the quiet guy who always said hello. But the scene looked devastating. 3 distressed females and 1 stoic male. Silas called the police. I didn't resist. I didn't try to explain myself to Silas. I knew the recorder was catching every single word. The police arrived 15 minutes later. I was handcuffed and led out of the building. The look of smug satisfaction on Sloane's face was something I will never forget. I spent the night in a holding cell. I contacted Alistair, a lawyer who specialized in employment law and defamation. He was a sharp, older male with a voice like gravel. I told him everything. I told him about the pen. Alistair smiled for the first time in our meeting. He told me to stay quiet and let him handle the communications. The company fired me the next morning for gross misconduct. They didn't even wait for a trial. They sent out a company-wide email about maintaining a safe environment. My reputation in the industry was being dragged through the mud. People I had known for years stopped answering my calls. It was the lowest point of my life. I spent weeks in my apartment, barely eating. Alistair was working behind the scenes. He filed a massive lawsuit against Vesper Analytics and the 3 women individually. He charged them with wrongful termination, defamation, and conspiracy. The discovery phase was where things got interesting. Vesper Analytics' legal team was arrogant. They thought they had a slam-dunk case because they had 3 witnesses. Sloane, Valerie, and Nadia all gave sworn depositions. They lied through their teeth. They gave detailed, harrowing accounts of how I had assaulted them. They described the terror they felt. They even had a therapist testify about their trauma. Alistair let them finish their entire performance. He didn't interrupt once, he just took notes. Then the day of the final deposition arrived. We were in a sterile conference room with a court reporter. Sloane was sitting across from me, looking down her nose. Alistair pulled out a small laptop and plugged in some speakers. He asked Sloane if she stood by her statement that I had attacked her. She said, absolutely. He asked her if she had ever discussed getting rid of me before that day. She said, never, we tried so hard to help him. Alistair hit the play button. The room went silent as the audio filled the space. First, it was the recording from weeks prior. The conversation between Sloane and Genevieve about the energy being off. The part where Sloane said she needed a reason to let me go. Sloane's face went from pale to ghostly white. She tried to say the audio was faked or manipulated. Then Alistair played the recording from the conference room. The sound of the door locking was crystal clear. The sound of Sloane calmly explaining the ultimatum. The sound of her telling Nadia to show the bruise. The sound of Sloane screaming for help when I hadn't even moved. The sound of the chair being knocked over. It was all there. The cold, calculated planning, the transition from calm to fake hysterics. Valerie and Nadia were in the room too. Nadia started shaking. Valerie looked like she was going to faint. The lawyer for Vesper Analytics put his head in his hands. He knew it was over. Alistair stopped the recording and looked at the court reporter. He asked if she had captured the audio for the record. She nodded, looking disgusted by what she had heard. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for them. The police dropped all charges against me within 24 hours. The district attorney opened an investigation into the 3 women for filing a false police report and perjury. Vesper Analytics went into damage control mode. They fired Sloane, Valerie, and Nadia on the spot. They even fired Genevieve for her involvement in the earlier discussions. The company's stock price took a hit when the news leaked to the local tech blogs. They offered me a massive settlement to go away. Alistair told them the settlement wasn't high enough. We went back and forth for a month. Finally, they agreed to a sum that was more than 10 years of my salary. They also had to issue a public apology and a full retraction of their claims. I sat in Alistair's office as we signed the final papers. He poured me a glass of expensive scotch. He said I was the most disciplined client he had ever had. Most people would have screamed back or fought. By staying quiet, I had given them enough rope to hang themselves. I took the money and moved to a different city. I didn't want to live in the place where I had been a pariah. I bought a nice house near a lake. I started my own data consulting firm. I only hire people based on their skills and integrity, regardless of anything else. A few months ago, I decided to look up what happened to the others. Sloane is no longer in the tech industry. Last I heard, she was working in retail in a different state. The perjury charges stayed on her record. Valerie and Nadia are both unemployed and effectively blacklisted. No one wants to hire a developer who conspires to frame a colleague. The company, Vesper Analytics, ended up being bought out by a larger firm. The brand was too tarnished to survive on its own. I was sitting on my porch yesterday watching the sun set over the water. I thought about that charcoal suit. I still have it in my closet. I don't wear it anymore. It reminds me of a version of myself that was too trusting. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't bought that pen. I would probably be in a prison cell right now. I would have lost everything. It makes me realize that being quiet isn't a weakness, it's a vantage point. You see things that the loud people miss. You hear the things they think are hidden. I looked at my phone and saw a notification from a former coworker. It was Silas, the security guard. He sent me a message saying he was glad I was doing well. He told me that after I left, he quit too. He said the place felt haunted by the lie. I invited him out to the lake for a weekend of fishing. He's a good male. We're going next month. I finished my scotch and went inside to my quiet home. Everything was in its place. No agendas, no games, just the data. And the data said I had won, but the real victory wasn't the money. It was the moment I realized they couldn't touch me anymore. I had recorded my own salvation. I went to bed and slept better than I had in years. It's funny how the truth sounds when it's finally played back. It sounds like silence for some and a nightmare for others. For me, it sounded like freedom. Moral of the story, always record the meetings. People are capable of anything when they think they have the numbers, but numbers don't lie. And neither did my pen. I woke up today and realized I hadn't thought about Sloane in weeks. Her name is just a footnote in a file now. My life is my own again. I think I'll buy a boat today. A nice, quiet boat for a nice, quiet male. It's a good day to be alive. It's a good day to be Julian. The world is large and full of people. Some are good, some are bad, most are just trying to get by. I learned to be the observer. And the observer always survives. I looked at my keyboard on the desk. It's a custom build, blue switches. The click of the keys is the only sound in the room. It's a beautiful sound. It's the sound of a story that is finally finished. I hit the final period and closed the lid. I am happy. I am safe. I am free. End of story. Thanks for reading. Take care of yourselves. Be smart. Be quiet. And always, always keep the receipts. The truth is a slow burn, but it burns the hottest. I think I'll go for that hike now. The mountains are calling, and they don't ask for culture fit. They just exist, like I do, peace.